Marketing Director here at PVBS. And I want to thank everyone for joining us on our introduction to Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. So today we're going to be providing an overview of the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors, which is a fully integrated business management solution. We're going to look at the executive dashboard, the fully integrated web time and expense system, as well as the project setup, including billing setup and managing funding. We're also going to cover invoicing, invoice formats, and time permitting, we'll get into managing indirect rates. A couple of things for housekeeping. I want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to our PVBS YouTube account later today. And if you have any questions as we're going along, you can post those into the question section, and we'll try to get to those as we go. If we cannot get to your question, we will contact you separately. Later today, you should also receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We would really appreciate any feedback that you have to help us make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a few minutes to answer some questions for us. We really appreciate that. So today's agenda for this webinar will include a brief introduction about PVBS, and then we're going to jump right into the demonstration of our product. So, and again, if we're able to, we'll answer questions as we go. So please, if you have questions, just post those and we will take care of that. And again, we'll try to save a little time towards the end to get to questions as well. So a little bit about PVBS. We are a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. It gives us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. We are an experienced leader with over 12 years of success in the government contracting market and an intelligent innovator with Microsoft systems. PVBS is a direct resource to both government contractors and the Microsoft community. So Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors from PVBS is a rich, robust accounting solution compliant with federal rules and regulations, provides complete integration and ease of use. PVBS is driven to develop excellence in providing the most comprehensive solution to our customers and our partnership channels. And with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Paul Skursky. He is our VP Sales and Marketing. He is actually one of the founders here for PVBS as well. So, Paul, I'm going to turn this over to you. Welcome, sir.
All right. Well, thanks, Damon, and good afternoon to everybody on the phone, or good morning, depending on where you're located. We're excited to give you this introduction to the Microsoft Dynamics NAV solution today. So just before we get into the product itself, I want to give you a little background on the solution. So this product was actually purchased by Microsoft. It was about 13 years ago. And in the last really 5 years has been growing at an incredible pace. It's the fastest growing Microsoft ERP/business product in their portfolio of products. It's also the most widely used product in the world for small mid-market companies as it relates to accounting and the back office software. So there's 110,000 companies that use it, almost 2 million licensed users. So really, I think what's exciting is Microsoft's making big investments into it, and it continues to grow at that fast pace. So this is just a little slide because people often have this question regarding, how does the relationship work between our organization and Microsoft? And we're a strategic partner for Microsoft. A couple things that are important. One, we're gold certified. We're also certified for Microsoft Dynamics. And what that means is the solutions that we bring to market, we actually incorporate them right into Microsoft's base system, and those are certified and tested by Microsoft. So the things that we've done to improve the product, the improved reporting and invoicing, it's actually tested and certified by Microsoft. And we are their go-to partner across the U.S. as it relates to government contractors. So we're their government contractor advisory partner, and we were one of the founders of that organization within Microsoft. All right, so that just kind of gives you a little bit of background, and we're going to hop right into the system. So, Damon, if you want to pass the controls over to me, we'll get started for everybody.
I will do that. And while we're doing that, Paul, did you want to do a poll real quick?
Yeah, sure. I think it'd be great to understand kind of the type of folks that are on the phone today. So maybe we can get an idea of what systems they're using.
Sure. So we have a question up as far as what accounting system is your company currently operating. And we have most of the products out there. well as options for others as well.
All right, so Damon, we'll just go ahead and we'll give the folks on the call, another 15 minutes.
15 minutes? Or 15
seconds? 15 seconds, yes.
We need that much time. We're almost done. We're almost at 100% here, and it looks like it's kind of evenly distributed across the board.
Yeah, so it looks like we got probably 75% of the folks voted, and we've got about 25% that are on QuickBooks, about 30% on Deltek. We've got a handful that are on ProCAS. Looks like about 11% now. More votes are coming in, and then a good 20% with other, and about 5% on the phone are actually on Microsoft Dynamics today.
Okay.
All right, so let me go ahead and Damn, if you want to turn this over to me, okay. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and get started, and what you're seeing is the Microsoft Dynamics NAV solution. And Microsoft, they've got 5 different products, 1 CRM and 3 what they would call ERP products. Dynamics NAV is the leader of all of them in terms of small mid-market companies. And then we also offer Dynamics AX, which is kind of for the Fortune 1000 type companies, so large organizations. So today is focused on small mid-market businesses. And what I want to start out with is just a general overview to show people the different aspects of the solution and how our clients are using it today. And like Damon mentioned, our focus as a business is helping companies that sell to the U.S. federal government. So whether you're providing professional services, you're reselling products, or you're a contract manufacturer, that's our core market. We do have a lot of our clients that are doing work in the commercial space too. So oftentimes they're that hybrid business with a mix of government and commercial work. So I'm logged into the system right now as an accounting manager, and I'm seeing key information that I'm responsible for performing or overseeing. So things like invoices that my team needs to create, expense reports or corrections that we need to process. And I can drill into each one of these stacks to get into the details. So in this case, here's the one expense report that was submitted by Carl Simmons for travel to California. It's been approved, but accounting, they need to go ahead and process it. I can open up this document to look at all the details of the charges, what projects and tasks it was charged against, and also who approved this expense report to get to this point. So I can see the folks that approved it and when they approved it. And then finally, I can also pull up any type of attachments. So if there was receipts attached to it, I can quickly get into that type of document. The idea of that role center is to have information right at people's fingertips with that ability to drill into it to understand details behind it. So other areas, whether it's certain charts you want to put on your home page, or I've got my Outlook showing. You can see my calendar, my open tasks. Each one of these little boxes has some configuration options. So for instance, if I wanted to show all of my emails, I could actually make that visible too, so that as emails come in, I could see that. On the right-hand side, you can see additional information regarding reports that you might have scheduled to be run that showed up in your inbox. What are those scheduled reports that haven't been run yet? And then up in the top section, I'm showing some key projects that I'm interested in. So as a user, I could manage that list of projects that I want to have on my home page, and it gives me quick access to it. So when I double-click one of those records, it launches the record itself, so I can look at not only the details of how this job was set up, but I can also see some of the key data elements against it. So key performance indicators for this record. So every master record has a status box, and it's going to show you key information about that record. So in this case, job 1002, I can quickly see contract and funded value, direct labor hours, AR balance. Any one of these values that you see the line underneath of it means I can drill into it. So I can drill into my AR balance of $8,200, and it shows me here are all the open accounts receivable entries against this job for this customer. So it's job related. As I drill in, you can see that it set a filter automatically on this job 1002. I see all the details of those records, including if I wanted to look at information about one of them, I could just select it. So in this case, invoice number 68, when we posted it, the customer owed us $1,672. If I wanted to pull up that original invoice, I could just say, show posted document, here's the invoice. If I wanted to reprint it, I could reprint it. I could also email it. So maybe the customer said, you know what, I didn't receive it, or there's something I was questioning on it. I can quickly get to that kind of information. I can also see the history of this. Not only notes that were taken against this AR record, but also I can drill into the remaining amount, and it shows me the history of the original AR, any type of applications to it. So that could be a credit memo or an invoice associated with it. And then from that particular entry, I can use Navigate, which allows me to drill across the system. So from this payment application, I could see what was the GL impact when we posted that payment. What was the impact on the customer ledger? Also, what was the impact on our bank ledger? So if I click Show here, now you can see that I put that check into our Bank of America bank account. It still shows open, which means I didn't reconcile the bank account yet. But what this shows is that, one, the ease of drilling in and navigating across the system, and also to show you when you post a document, it hits all these ledgers in real time. So when I posted that original invoice, it created this AR entry and also an entry to probably unbilled. And then from there, when I posted that payment or the receipt of that cash, you can see the entries that were made on that side. So, as an auditor, it's easy to find information. For somebody in finance that's trying to get answers to questions, easy to get to the details. To give you an idea of the breadth of the application, because I know that the folks that are on the call today, there's a wide range of businesses, some that are services companies, some that are product companies. So I want to just show you the different aspects of the system. We're not going to go through all of them today, but to give you an idea of the breadth of the application, full financial management. So everything from the GL and cash management through receivables, payables, fixed assets, sales order processing, purchasing. So whether the purchasing is materials for projects or for manufacturing, or you've got subcontract labor that you're procuring. There's a whole subcontract management component to the system. Warehousing and manufacturing. Project accounting is the core job system, and that's where we're going to spend a lot of time today, because I would say probably 75% of our clients are professional services companies, because that's a lot of what the government procures. So we're going to focus on this today. Also, product contracts, that's for reseller products. It's got HR and payroll built into it. The second piece we'll get into today is the time and expense system. So this is the place that all of your employees are going, a browser-based solution that allows them to record their time, expenses. Also, you can requisition materials here for projects, and then the approval of those different type of documents. So we'll go through that workflow on how your typical employee is going to create timesheets and go through that whole entry and approval process. In addition to each of those modules containing core functionality, there's also a series of reports for each module. So in this case, I'm within project accounting. Here are the different reports that are available either to the accounting team, or you could provide restricted access to folks like in operations. So if you want to give PMs access, they can get read-only access via a browser to certain data. So I can look at information about my AR history by project, funding notification reports, job revenue summary, job status, which is your project P&L, different labor analysis reports, unbilled reports. So series of reports for every one of the modules in the system. In addition to those canned reports, you can develop your own reports. And we also have something we call analysis services, which is a data cube tool. And what this allows is for companies to actually build their own dashboards based on what's core to their business. So this is a business overview trend, and it's showing me a trend of my revenue, profit, and AR. There's also other views. Let me go ahead and dismiss this. There's other views like a balance sheet with my key metrics. So I can see my current ratio, cash ratio, quick ratio, right on that main dashboard. Income statement, cash flow, different indirect rate views. So if you're doing a lot of cost type work, and as the finance team, you're responsible for managing those rates and making sure that you maximize profit and revenue, this is a way that you can keep up to date with what are the trends of your rates over time, and this is going to be a view that shows whatever your indirect rate structure is. Plus one is going to show me information about where I'm at year to date. So current period and year to date, where are the rates trending? So there's a set of these different financial dashboards. Then there's a set of project dashboards. So the project dashboards are typically geared towards the operations team, giving them visibility in a more of a real-time fashion of information about project profitability. My labor analysis is going to show me details of hours by project and task. And you can see these little filters to the right. You can set multiple filters. So if I want to look at one or multiple jobs, I could do that. Or maybe you want to have a filter for a department and see all projects within your department, how many hours have been charged. The GL detail is going to be information regarding what are all the cost categories that have been recorded against this project. So what's the details regarding my labor, ODCs, subcontractors, indirects. The project spend is my personal favorite in terms of the dashboards, and this is giving me visibility of two pieces. So it's my project P&L, so I'm choosing a project, range of tasks, or all tasks for a period of time, and it's showing me a trend of what has my revenue been running each month, all of my operating expenses, including my indirects, net income or loss, and also what have we spent. So that's how much of the funding got used in that period. And you can see if I look in my formula bar, there's no data that's keyed in here. It's just showing me for this job cube a measure called total spent, filtered by these different elements, job, task, and period. Over to the right, my burn rate chart is giving me visibility of how's my funding being consumed month over month, more in a graphical view. Then based on the average of the last 3 months, we divide it by the remaining funding to give you an indication of how many months of funding are left. So you're supposed to notify the government at 75%, supposed to do that 60 days in advance. So this is going to give me a little visibility of, based on that average burn rate, when are we going to get to that point. So that's an idea of kind of from a general overview, the different pieces of the application. Now I want to spend a little bit of time on setting up projects and collecting time, and we'll get into indirect rate management so you see those core capabilities. Let me start off with the first project on my list and just give you a little visibility of how projects are set up and the kind of details we're capturing. What I'm seeing in here is information regarding this job. So what is the internal job number, description of the work, who is the client we're doing the work for. So anytime you see this little caret down, it means I'm looking into a list. So I select from my list of clients, and now it fills in all the relevant fields. I could have one or multiple contacts at that client. Once I select that contact list, it's going to show me, in this case, all the contacts within the Department of Defense that I could assign as the technical contact. What type of client is it? So whether it's commercial, federal, state, and local government. What type of contract? So is it in this case, it's cost plus fixed fee, but maybe it's award fee, incentive fee, firm fixed price, T&M, LOE. So depending on the type of contract, you'd select that contract type as the default to all the tasks underneath of it. What is my period of performance? That's my starting date and ending date. We'll show some other fields on the other tabs. So now on the contract tab, this is giving me information about what is the primary contract number. So folks that have any type of IDIQ or GWAC, they can select what is that main contract vehicle that the work is being performed under, and then the system can roll everything up. So if you want to know all of the jobs and tasks being performed under this contract vehicle, you can report at that contract level. What is the contracting office and paying office associated with this work, if applicable? So those are kind of my default settings for the tasks underneath of it. but we'll show you is you can override things at the task level. On the posting tab, the way to think about posting is this is the financial component, of the setup. So it's giving me information about revenue recognition and billing. Our billing pool group, this is related to if you have a cost-type project, your indirects. So whether you're using your corporate rate or you've got a unique rate structure on this project, so examples of things like, maybe no G&A is allowed on travel, or you've got, for this particular project, you've got an SM&H pool. You can identify by job what you're going to use in terms of the indirects on the billing side. The fee percent on a cost plus fixed fee contract, this is telling the system what is the profit you're earning for each of those expense categories. So across all of my expense categories, and you can define the level that you track, that fee. So is it just you got fee on labor, maybe your subcontract labor could be different, travel. You can define to what granularity by project and task that you track that fee. It can be different by job, and you're just selecting, the standard code there. And then what type of withholding is on that job. So this is my main setup at the job level. And then what you have is underneath that job, there's one or multiple tasks. And these tasks can be, sub and sub-tasks below that. So the WBS is a 60-character alphanumeric field, and this is the place where you can see the levels of charging and also what levels map to a certain CLIN or ACRN. In my example here, if I look at my level 2, this is my charging level on this project, I can see that these map to a certain ACRN, and I can see the overall contract or funded value of that particular level. When I look at any individual level, if I wanted to see the history of the modifications to it, these are any type of contract mods, I'll just hit the mod detail screen, and now it shows me all of the information regarding mods to that contract. If I needed to enter a new one, once I go down to a line, it creates a new line for me. If I hit F8 in the system, it copies the line above it. So little things like that make it easier for people as it relates to running the system. And I think that's a big differentiator, is the little things that help users to be more efficient. Microsoft has a keen area of focus on that because it's all about how do you reduce the number of keystrokes, how do you make it easier for a user to reprint things, to find information, to do their daily job, because we're all being asked to do more with less. So the starting date, another example, if I hit T, it puts in today's date. I could also just use the full calendar if needed. Now I'm identifying, was there a change to contractor funded value with this mod? So maybe this was a $300,000 mod, and it's fully funded. Once I accept this change at the task or subtask level, what you're going to see is that main contract gets updated. So right now it's 7.4 and 7.2 million. Now it's gone to 7.7 and 7.5 million. In addition, you'll see that that same charge level for setup now is 6.5 and 6.4. So the system will automatically roll from the funding mod that we recorded up to the task, subtask the funding was recorded at, all the way up to the main job. So you can record it at the detailed level. The system automatically rolls it up for me. Also within this WBS structure, you can see whether a charge is visible for timesheets, expense reports, maybe it's both, maybe it's neither. Membership tells the system from a charging perspective who can actually see these codes. One of the things that's really great is the level of integration between the time entry system and the accounting system is really unmatched in the industry. So there's things like, as soon as that period of performance is defined, that's how the system knows who can what period people can charge to. And then once I assign the folks in real time, as soon as I add them and say okay, the system makes it available for those people to charge their time against it. You can restrict either at the entire job level, job task level, and then you can also at the individual level identify a restricted period. So in this case, even beyond the period of performance, this user can only charge from 3.1 to 3.15. So it really makes it, whoops, go back to that screen. It really makes it easier from a management perspective. You do it all from one interface. As I make the updates inside of NAV, automatically replicates it over the time entry system. No process to run, no manual work, and it all happens in real time. Time approval, expense approval, and requisition approval hierarchies. System affords for unlimited levels of approval, and you can just decide, to what level of approval is it by job that you're going to be managing that particular job or task to. In addition to defining the work breakdown structure, I guess one last thing to mention, Damon, on this is that I mentioned it's a 60-character alphanumeric field, which means you can have multiple levels. I had a question yesterday from a prospect that talked about, can it be different charging levels by job or by task? And absolutely. So within this job, I could have, on this task, the charge level is level 2, but maybe on a different task, I could have the charge level be level 3, level 4, whatever it might be. So for each one of these tasks, you can define to what level you charge to, and obviously the roll-up would be to the uppermost level. In addition to, and also each one can be of a different type. So I could have a firm fixed price task on a mainly T&M contract, vice versa, or any combination thereof. In addition to those main setups, from a budgeting perspective, you can build a budget by resource, any of your direct expense categories. Once you define a month, you can calculate what the indirect burdens would be based on your provision rates by running the recalculate total function. There's also a copy feature that allows you to build a budget for 1 month and copy that 1 month budget out over as many periods as you see fit, including accounting for things like labor increases, or even if you had a projected ODC increase, you could identify that. There's also import-export from Excel feature within that area. Other things that people like to leverage, in addition to defining the structure, the budgets, is let me go back to my main job form. You can define different funding limits. So whether you're capping things like you cap the ODCs at a certain level, you only have funded a certain number of dollars by labor category code. Each of those funding caps can be added in addition to the typical funding cap based on whatever your funded value is of a job or task. And then finally, from a job setup, we also have this alert function. And what alerts allows me to do is actually leverage on a nightly basis. The system runs a compare where it'll look at what was spent or billed compared to what was funded or budgeted, and it'll trigger an alert out to somebody in operations. So it can be to your PM, to a task manager. Maybe you want to just hand key an email address in there. You can do that. And just for quick explanation, billed, funded, and budgeted are all pretty straightforward. The term spent for us, what that means is, you've got costs that have been recorded, but they might not necessarily have been processed yet. So think about the timesheet cost. If you're a semi-monthly timesheet, you won't have all the costs in there until the 16th or the 30th, 31st of the month. So this allows the system to see, what was that amount that's been entered in a timesheet that hasn't been processed yet? So you can compare in the middle of a pay period, what's been spent. And for T&M projects, spent is equal to the billed amount, and for cost-type projects, it's just equal to the standard labor cost of a resource, of that resource. So really giving people more real-time information to perform their job. Let me go into one more job just to talk about one different setup. And I'm going to go into a T&M project. I won't go through the different tabs, but what I want to touch on a T&M is that instead of billing based on cost principles, you're based on T&M bill rates. So the setup for a T&M job under the setup resource prices, you're seeing for this job, by labor category code and effective date what the bill rate is. And if I highlight just a couple lines here, what you see is that this labor category code, Consultant 1, currently it's billing at $189 an hour, but next year on Jan 1, it's going to escalate to $198. A couple things to note, this effective date can be any date. Oftentimes, that contract date is not, at the end of your time cycle or at the beginning of the year. It's on the 17th or the 21st of the month. The system will accommodate, that change in labor rate mid-month. And when you process your labor, it'll know how many hours are at the 189 rate, how many are at the 198 rate. So it really, again, goes to automation. So I'm going to just filter my list so I see for this job 2025 just my Consultant 1 labor category. The next setup is I've already decided who works in this project, but maybe they're not working under their corporate labor category code. They're working on this job under a job-specific labor category code. So if I look at all folks that are Consultant 1s on this project, I'm going to filter to that same thing, and now what you're seeing is for job 2025, here are the 4 people that are Consultant 1. So once I assign them this labor category code, it'll automatically default on their timesheet, and the system will know what's the proper bill rate. On any one of these list or ledger forms, if I want to send the data to Excel, I can use my Send to Excel function, or you can see that it says or Control-E. So if I hit Control-E, it's going to take this information, send it to Excel, and now what happens is that same information that was in the accounting system, now it's in Excel. All these filters are all still available, and also you can actually enter data in Excel, and I can copy it back in. So if I put the next 2 years for this Consulting 1 labor rate, I could do that in Excel, hit my Control-C to copy it, and we'll go back into NAV, and we're going to paste that information right back in. So what that does is from any list or ledger, I can do that copy-paste. Just think about when you do journal entries. If someone does them in Excel, you can copy them in. You don't need to rekey them. It just makes it easier, more efficient for people. So what you're going to see is several points of integration between Dynamics NAV and the Microsoft Office suite. So that was one example. And one other example I want to just touch on real quick is this whole idea of document management. So if you have documents related to this job, so those documents could be the original contract. Maybe it's an email with the funding mod or some other type of document. You can actually just drag and drop it against the record, and it'll drop that document into SharePoint and link it to this record. So just think about if you're trying to manage documents in a file server or even in SharePoint, how nice it would be to know, here's all the documents related to 2025, that job. So it can work on any one of these master records, so just like the status box. So, Damon, I think it's a great time to get an idea of, for the folks on the phone, are people using some other Microsoft products, and if they are, which ones?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. I'll bring that Paul up in a second. We had a question that came in real quick.
Yeah.
The question is, do you have to have SharePoint in order to use the system? I'll let you answer.
Yeah,
I'll bring the poll up.
So I guess two things. One is you don't need SharePoint to use the system. There are some features that leverage SharePoint. So this is one feature that leverages SharePoint, but I think Microsoft realizes folks might not use SharePoint, so instead of using that SharePoint link, there's also just a manual link where I can go out and link a document. You're going to need to put that document somewhere on a file server so everybody could get to it, but to work around that, you can use this link function. I guess the one thing to mention about the integration with SharePoint while we're clarifying that is that it doesn't require the paid version of SharePoint. So there's actually a free version of SharePoint called, I think it's SharePoint Foundation. And those features can leverage the SharePoint Foundation piece.
All right, I'm going to launch our poll right now. So the question is, what Microsoft products is your company currently using? Excel, SharePoint, Outlook, or Office 365? And
So we're not going to give them 15 minutes to do this.
No,
one.
no. I think we can do it in 15, 20 seconds.
All right, sounds
plenty
good.
Of time.
Yeah, and just while we're waiting for the poll to finish, Office 365, the system also works with that. So I think that's one of the things that folks want to make sure that it keeps up with the latest versions of the Microsoft product. So, all right, Dame, let's go ahead and it looks like we've got quite a few people that have already voted. Not surprised, but Excel. Actually, it's 97% of the people use Excel. So I don't know who the one person is that's not using Excel, or two people, but most are using Excel. Over 50% using SharePoint, 75% on Outlook, and 50% of the people are using Office 365. So not only can those integrations with Office 365 work, but also you can use your Office 365 security to log into NAV. So NAV can leverage that Office 365 login if needed, and it also can use your Active Directory login. So really nice integration with those different Microsoft components. All right, so now we've set up a project, we've defined the budget, who can charge to it. Now accounting and contracts have kind of done their piece, and let's go to the next step, which is we want to start recording time and expenses and go through the process to bill those type of charges. So let's go over to the timesheet side, and just a couple things to mention on the timesheet. So this is completely browser-based. From a timesheet cycle perspective, it's fully configurable. So in my demo example, I've got a semi-monthly timesheet. That's how our business operates on a semi-monthly basis from a timekeeping perspective. But if you've got weekly, biweekly, monthly, we've got a client that's got an 8-day timesheet. All those concepts are supported. Damon's giving me a look. What is an 8-day timesheet?
8 days a week is a Beatles song, right?
Well, and in fact,
they took it to heart.
That company did, and just a plug for Paul McCartney. I actually saw him this week, and for a 73-year-old musician, he's still amazing. So we're in a timesheet now. In this case, it's Andrew Simmons, his timesheet from June 16th to the 30th. So when I log in, a couple things that a user can see. One, they could pull up old timesheet reports. They can enter time on behalf of somebody. So if you are entering time on behalf of someone that is remote or it's for the CEO, you can enter their time for them, and they can then come in and actually submit it. I can also look up my PTO balance. So as a user, selecting that PTO button is going to show me what is my current accrued balance for PTO. The PTO accrual function, it allows each company to define their own PTO category. So if your organization has vacation and sick and holiday, you can have those. If it's all just PTO, you can have those. So it's all defined by the client. So I can look up my PTO balance. I can also request time off. So if I need to take some time off in the future, I can go ahead and select when I need that time off, and then once I do that, save this, that'll submit that time off request to my approver, and then that approver can go in and approve or reject my time off request. If they approve it, it'll just automatically go onto my timesheet. If they reject it, they can put a comment in there and let them know why that time off request was rejected. I guess one note on that is the approver can also see what my PTO balance is. So maybe I don't have PTO, and that's why my approver rejected it. I can also define a list of my favorites. So as a user, in this case, if I charge to these 3 projects every pay period, I can put them on my list of favorites. I can add and remove as necessary, and then it's just going to fill in my timesheet when I create a new timesheet for the period. Once I've got my charge codes defined for the period, if I needed to add just one line, I could do that. And then I would go to the day that I worked and enter my time. So yesterday was the 24th, and maybe I put in 3 hours against this project 1002. I could enter those hours there. And then maybe it was 5 against this project here. If I needed to enter a comment, I can go ahead and enter a comment against that record. Go ahead and, let me enter a comment on this one. and then I would just enter here whatever that comment is. And then once I'm done for the day, then I can just go ahead and save it, and that's going to be the process I go through on a daily basis. The system has regular reminders, so on a daily basis, you can have the employees reminded to enter their timesheets. So let me just go into the setup inside of NAV. So this is another example where, all the setup pieces, for the time entry are inside the accounting system, so just one interface for me to worry about as an administrator. So those email notifications, I can decide, when do I need to notify people? So maybe I want to notify the approver when a timesheet's submitted, or send the daily reminder out to users if they don't enter their time and copy their supervisor on it. And then when do we send it? You can choose that time. And other reminders like end of timesheet reminders, expense and requisition reminders. So as a user, I'm just going through that daily process. At the end of the pay period, I hit submit, and then this is going to be the submission of my timesheet. So it's going to lock it down and then send that email to my approver to approve it. And then at that point, it flips my status from being, in draft mode to being in submitted mode. Let me talk a little bit about expense reports while we're here. So on the expense reporting side, we'll go ahead and create a new expense report. So what is the period that I traveled? So maybe I was on travel from the 21st until today, the 25th. What is the description of the travel? So maybe we traveled up to New York. If I received in advance, I could enter that. We'll click the Save button. Now it creates my expense header for me here. From here, if I traveled based on per diem, I could run my per diem wizard. If I just traveled based on whatever my strict expenses were, I could create my expense line. So I'm going to do per diem based on travel to New York. I could use my drop-down or just type it in. What was the destination I traveled to? So I traveled to Syracuse, and what county is that in? So it automatically filters this down here. So let me go ahead and we'll take out the O there. So it knows that the county, I think in most cases, the city is only in one county, but there probably are examples where maybe a city might be in two counties. So I just select the county, click next. What was the date that I was in that particular location? So we'll just say I was there for the whole trip. What's the job that's related to? What is the task it's related to? Maybe this is related to go live. The lodging per diem, or the lodging amount, where is that going to go to? So we'll put that to the lodging expense code. Then meals and incidentals, we'll put it right to per diem. Click next. Now it's giving me the grid. So in case breakfast was included with lodging, I could enter that. Click next. And then finally, I'm going to put in what was the amount of my room, what was the room tax. Click finish. And now it's going to create that expense report for me. So all the details, including my 75% first day and last day on the per diem side. If I had any attachments, I could go ahead and load those attachments up inside the system. Once I complete my expense report, I'll save it, hit the submit button, and this submit process will trigger the email for my expense approver to come out and approve that expense report. One of the great things is, as I was actually entering that on the web, if we go back into Dynamics NAV, what you're going to see is that expense report that was entered, it was actually created in real time inside the accounting system. So if I log in, you'll see all the detailed charge codes are all there. You can see that it was submitted today at 11:43. The approval process, so who needs to approve this expense report? It's been submitted to them, but it hasn't been approved yet. And then if there was any type of attachments I attached to it, they would be shown here. So, as an accountant, you don't need to rekey any of the information. Just a couple notes on this. Some questions that people often ask is, at this point, have any costs been recorded? So it doesn't hit any of the expense accounts or the project until accounting does their final review. They turn it into an invoice and they post it. So that act of posting it, that's when it's going to have the impact of hitting the general ledger. It's going to hit the payable to the employee. It's also going to hit the project ledger. So accounting gets that last review because they got to make sure that people coded things right. So if it's not coded properly, they could reject it or fix it. But they don't have to rekey things, which is a big time saver for people that have a lot of expense reports. So on the website, we talked about expense reports and timesheets. Now let's fast forward to July 1st, and now we're in there processing the time. Let's talk about, what the timesheet administrators, the type of tasks that they're going through. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to run this missing time report, and this is going to give them visibility of everybody that hasn't had their time approved, or maybe they haven't submitted hours or they're missing hours there. I can preview this report. I can also print it, save it as a PDF, Word, or Excel, or I can also schedule it. So when I go home the night of the 30th, I could actually schedule this report to run and then show up in my report list as any of these documents. And then I just tell the system, when do I want to run it? So just like with emails, you can schedule those to be sent. You can also schedule these reports to be run, and it'll show up in your inbox inside of NAV at the time that's been designated. So once I do my missing time, and I don't envy the people that need to chase down the folks that don't enter the time. I am sometimes a culprit there of not entering my time. And I know that our timesheet administrator tracks me down sometimes on that. But there's no magic to this. Once you get folks to enter the time and have that time approved, then you run the import timesheet function. And what this is going to do is it's going to bring in all that approved time to the journal. I'm going to calculate the labor distribution. Once I do that labor distribution calculation, now I can see, once I post this thing, what's going to be the impact on the system. So I'm going to run my time journal summary report, and what it's showing is the details of when I post this, what's going to happen. So it's going to hit all of the employees that enter time. It's going to hit their resource or employee ledger. So it's going to hit it with the number of hours and the rate per hour. This is the summarized total. Then when I go further down, what you're going to see is what project impact. So what projects did this hit? What was the amount of labor cost that's going to hit each project? If anybody took any type of PTO, what was the benefit impact, then the GL impact. So again, another example that shows you when you actually post this, it hits all those ledgers in real time. You don't need to close a ledger at the end of the period. Once you post, it's done in real time. The next thing is, if you're a payroll person and you do payroll in-house, you would just take it over to the payroll side of the system, and you'll be able to run the payroll inside of NAV. We also have a lot of clients that outsource their payroll. So whether you use ADP, Paychex, we also have Payroll Networks, which is a local payroll provider that's a key partner of ours. You can use any of those payroll providers. Plus, we've worked with many others, and oftentimes they have similar formats. So you would send that payroll file off that you could upload in the payroll system for them to calculate the gross to net and cut those checks. You can also create subcontractor invoices from here. So if you had people that entered their time that were not employees, they were subcontractors, it'll create the purchase invoice for what you're going to need to pay them. Finally, you post this journal, and that's going to hit those different components that we showed in that setup there. So Damon talked earlier about indirects. So before we go to the billing side of it, I want to talk a little bit about cost pools and talk about how you can manage your indirects inside the system. So this is the setup for managing indirects. It's as simple or as complicated as your business. So in my example, I've got fringe, overhead, company site, client site, and G&A. So there's 4 steps to setting it up. So step 1 is you define your rate structure. So these are my pools. Both final and intermediate pools or service centers are all within this list. The only requirement when you think about a service center or an intermediate pool is that pool needs to be at a sequence above where the costs are loaded into. So in this example, fringe is an intermediate pool, and those fringe costs are above my overhead and G&A because I'm going to take the fringe and load it into each before it's actually allocated out to projects. The next step, once you define your pool structure, is define how that rate gets calculated. So what costs are being accumulated in my pool, which ones are being accumulated in my base. And this is just a range of accounts. So my overhead accounts are going to be a range of accounts in my general ledger that in this case is from account 7,000 through 7,700. The next step is once I define my pools, how the rate gets calculated, I'm defining how that allocation works. So are those costs actually allocated into account to be later picked up for a service center or intermediate pool, or is it a final pool where the costs are going to be allocated out to projects, in this case at both an actual and provisional rate? And then finally, you're telling the system, what are you using as your provisional rate? And there's an effective date on there, so you're going to see your rates through time. Once you get your final rate, you can plug that in. Then each month, you're just running your allocations. It's going to post that stuff to the general ledger and also the project ledger. And then when I'm in, let me go into my GL, and I'll just show you a little bit about what those entries are going to look like. It's going to give you all the detail in the entries. So if I go down to my allocation accounts, I'm going to highlight a couple of them. So this is the entries that were made, overhead to project, company site actual. Then there's an offset. It basically just zeroes that transaction out, so there's no impact on your income statement. When I drill into it, what you're going to see is for each one of the allocation entries that were made, it shows, what was the amount, the rate, and then if I go over to the right, it's going to be the total amount of that allocation, the projects and tasks that was allocated to. So you can see the detail of how the rate was accumulated and posted and what projects and tasks it was posted to. And then there's also a year-end function, whether it's for the year-end invoice or final allocations, once you do that true-up. So Damon, I guess we have one last poll. Before I go to billing, I think it'd be great to know from an initiative perspective. I think we've got one on, what's their focus?
Yeah, the important, most important for an organization to improve. So
okay.
The question is really just trying to gather what the pain points are for our prospects out there. Is it reporting capabilities that you want to improve on, automation, compliance, integration, or something else?
And I think, Damon, where this is, where these points came up from is, over the last 10 years, it's one of the questions we ask companies because companies are looking to invest in systems because, they want to make some strategic improvements. And these are probably the most common that we hear from companies of, why are they looking to change, from QuickBooks or Deltek or Procast, whatever it might be. And oftentimes these are the ones that we're hearing. And all right, so we'll just let's give it another 5 seconds.
Sure.
And
looks like we're pretty evenly split between reporting, automation, compliance, and integration.
Okay.
As well. Yeah.
So it looks like some are they're all between 17 and 30%, with reporting being number 1, automation 2, compliance 3, and integration 4. I don't know if that's because that's the order we listed them in or not, but that's kind of how they came in. So good information to have. All right. So before we go to invoicing, I want to talk just a minute about managing subcontracts, because what we're seeing is, more and more teaming out there, and even the smaller companies, that are winning prime contracts, whether you're competing today, you're a partner tomorrow. So managing those subcontractors is a key part of what people do. So, the system supports purchase orders, purchase invoice, purchase requisitions, and also this whole idea of subcontract management. This is a place where you could set up your subcontract agreements. And just like we talked about before with the document management piece, if you had any type of, the agreement with the subcontractor, you could have it against the subcontract agreement or against the vendor card, either one. I'm going to go into both just to show you those two areas. But this is my subcontract agreement. In this case, it's for a certain job and task. Who is the vendor that the subcontract agreement is with? So we'll go ahead and pull up that vendor. So here is the vendor, A1 Subcontracting Corporation. we pull it up, and I won't go through all the tabs here, but I do want to just touch on this vendor categorization tab, because when you manage your subcontractors, if you need to report on them to SBA, you're able to track for each one of these vendors what is the type of business. So is it small, large, foreign owned, not-for-profit? What is their vendor classification? So if they have a disadvantaged status, you can identify which ones relate to this particular vendor. These couple other fields are ones that actually I added in the demo, and this is a great place to talk about some flexibility here. So on any one of these records, you can add your own field. So we had a prospect, which is now a customer, that they wanted to have a vendor status. So they wanted to show, is their vendor approved, preferred, under review, etc. So as a company, you can actually add these own fields yourself. And the thing that's great is when I add them to a form, I can also add them to the list. So if I want to show all of my vendors that are currently under review, I can filter that value. Here's the 2 that are actually under review. So maybe we can't finalize that subcontract agreement with these guys yet because they're under review. But great way to not only manage vendors and subcontractors, but also if you have unique information you want to track about your vendors, your customers, your employees, you guys can add those things in. So additional information about this subcontract, you can identify what type of agreement. So is it T&M, fixed price, cost type? What's the period of performance of this agreement? At the top level, I can see information about how it was funded. So that's in the body, is showing that we funded $15,000 for this subcontractor. $2,000 is obligated. This means there's been POs cut for $2,000. If I drill into that, here's the details of the PO. I could actually pull up the document if needed. And then finally, our expended, that's how much of the costs have actually been processed through the system. So I can go to the subcontract card to get easily that type of information. So now I've recorded time and expenses. We've recorded subcontractor costs. We've got our indirect rate set up. Now let's go ahead and generate an invoice. The process to do that is first you'd run this create invoice function. And what it does is it creates an invoice worksheet or an invoice proposal. This is the place that I'm going to review things to make sure everything is accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and print this. I won't go through all the options, but you can print it in different ways, including do you want to roll it up? Do you want to subtotal it by task? Do you want to see inception to date information? So I'm not going to subtotal it by task, but we'll go ahead and preview it. I'm going to see it by resource versus by just labor category. So when we preview it, let's make it a little bit bigger so us folks that want to keep our eyes strong, we don't need to squint. So I can look at the detail of billing period, period of performance, all this information. You remember we entered in the initial contract setup. Then I see the details of what was our labor by individual labor category, subcontract labor, any type of other direct costs. What was our indirects? So what was the indirect applied? And then if we go down, you can see what was the total fee. And then on the next page, I think we've got the total amount for this invoice and also withholding. Any of these invoices, you can also export them to Excel, PDF, or Word. I guess this isn't an invoice yet. It's in process to be approved. If you need to have it approved, you can send it off for approval. Once you post the invoice, it becomes a posted document. And then these posted documents, you can reprint them as many times as you want. You can see I've printed this one 9 times. But I could reprint it. I could also email it. You can print in those different formats, but you can also print it on the government forms. So the 1034, 1035, I can also print it in that format. So, I think really it's about try to drive ease of use, automation, and visibility of information. So that's kind of a little bit of a tour of Dynamics NAV. Today was meant to provide a little bit of a deep dive, but also if you have some additional questions or you'd like to see things in more detail, we're happy to schedule a follow-up either independent for you, as a web meeting or at your facility.
Very good. Yeah, very good, Paul. And we're running right on schedule. We've got about 1 minute left.
Okay.
A couple questions came up, and some we may have to answer these individually. One of the questions that actually was asked twice, so I'm going to go with this one first, was concerning the implementation time frame.
Okay.
If they wanted to have this standing up at the new year, when do they have to have their contract done?
That one is very tough because it really depends on the size of your business. So what I would suggest is, David, we'll take those folks and follow up with them independently, because it can take anywhere from, I've seen it happen as quick as a couple months to we've got some pretty large clients that it's a year-long project. But 3 to 4 months, I'd say, on average, is probably where things are.
Okay. And we are at 12 o'clock, so I think we're going to wrap it up now. And there are some questions that we will get to. We'll contact you separately. And I want to thank everyone again for attending today's webinar. And, if you need to contact us, our contact information is on the screen there. And hopefully we'll hear from you soon. And see you later. Thanks.
Yes,
have a great day.
Have a wonderful day, and have a happy 4th of July to everybody on the call today. Thank you very much.